March 3rd, and we do have a quorum, so I will call this meeting to order. The first order of business is agenda approval. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
We will vote to approve our agenda. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Tonight's agenda is approved. Dr. Stanley, will you please review tonight's agenda for us and the community?
Yes, Chair. So we have excellence in action. Really excited about that this evening, and then we may have hearing from members of the public. You have a few consent agenda items to approve. We're hearing about our social studies curriculum adoption, our budget parameters, and then you have several policies for review. And then for action, we're moving to adopt the literacy curriculum, Edina Public Schools academic calendars, our achievement integration budget, the American Indian Education Program vote of concurrence, and there are several policies that have moved to action stage as well. Leadership committee updates, superintendent updates, and there is information only in the board packet as well.
Thank you. This month's Excellent in Action will feature examples of STEAM instruction at the Normandale Media Center. Our guest speaker is Linnea West, Normandale's media specialist. And I believe we have some third and second graders with us today. And I'd like to welcome up to the microphone Vivian Putz, Alicia Vermani, Max Dixon, Wilder LaCase, and Jack Papajohn. Thank you all for joining us here tonight.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Mercy, I should have said mercy.
Merci. Come on up here, Alicia. Come on up here. Okay. Thanks to these adorable kids, families, for bringing them up here to share their great work that they do at school. So if you take a look, our first slide kind of describes what a library media center is for us. And we know that libraries are the heart and soul of a school for literacy development, and that means that we grow great readers. We are a hub also for things like creativity and innovation. And one of the things that we like to practice is how to empower our kids to be the innovators of the future. And that is through our STEAM experiences, our design thinking, and our coding experiences with we're piloting a new kind of way to do that this year. So we have our first guest is Alicia, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what we work with. And we work with Legos. Maybe some of you have heard of them before. Legos in schools is a little bit different than working with Legos at home. We know that it helps them become problem solvers, critical thinkers. It helps them work on their creativity and collaboration. And when we say collaboration, are we talking about working together or working apart?
Together.
We're working together. Alicia, can you tell us why you like to work with Legos?
I like Legos because I can use my imagination to code, and if I make a mistake when I'm doing a build, I can easily fix it and learn from it.
Thank you, Alicia. And Vivian, will you come on up? We practice something called design thinking when we are working with STEAM initiatives, and this is a way that it's a process where we identify problems, brainstorm solutions, we make a prototype, and we test our ideas. Because when we're testing our ideas, what are we trying to do with our ideas?
Make them better.
Excellent. Can you tell us what you like about working with Legos?
I like building something that I think looks good and making a story about it. Sometimes I have a story and build something that goes with it.
All right, Jack and Wilder, can you come on up? All right, Jack first. And so with our Legos, they are connected by a hub and an iPad, and we're able to code the Legos, which means tell the Legos what to do once we build it. We might build an Arctic sled, we might build a car, we might build a windmill. So we are building different things, and coding is really the bridge between the ideas and the execution. Coding allows us to practice computational thinking, logical thinking, and structured problem solving. And it really encourages experimentation and innovation. So we don't always have it right the first time when we learn to code. Jack, can you tell us why you like to code?
I like to figure things out.
And Jack, do you always know how to figure things out?
No, I just put a coding block up and I press go to see what it does before I make a code.
Awesome, thanks, Jack. Jack, can you head back and we'll have Wilder sit right here? And so we have all levels of coders in our Legos classes, and we work with first graders through fifth graders, and we practice with the kindergartners with some other Lego sets, but we really do the coding once they're in first grade. But can you tell us, Wilder, what it is you like about coding?
I like the coding. The coding blocks are not too complex, so it's good for starters.
And are you a starter or are you a little bit of an expert?
More or less.
More or less of an expert. Okay. You can head back. And then Max, can you come on up? So, and if you look up at the slide, you'll notice that on the district's mission is baby Wilder when he is in kindergarten, and this is grown-up Wilder now in second grade. So I saw his picture, I was like, look at that's what he used to look like. So cute. So how do all of these things come together? So what we have is a tool, Legos, that provides us a really hands-on approach to building models and building things. Then we use our design thinking to build that and then improve that model to make it better. And then we take our coding and we make it come alive, make it interactive, make it something where you make it happen, right? Tell us, Max, a little bit, why do you like to code?
I love to build it. When you code it, it does stuff. It makes me creative.
And all of this is part of a movement that Lego has in Lego education called Build the Change. So it's all about giving kids this opportunity to really use this kind of thinking for excellence and innovation and having STEAM experiences, connecting stories with science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. And that's it. Are there any questions for us? Or for the kids, of course. They're here to answer the questions.
Board Member Allenberg has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I have more of a comment. First of all, I'm very impressed that all of you came tonight to share your stories in front of us and the community of Edina. And I just wanted to let you guys know that my daughter started coding and doing Legos about your age. And she just came back from their regional Edina robotics tournament for the high school. And she and the high school team use innovation, they use coding, and every year they build big robots to do a really interesting task. And I hope that it sparks interest and innovation in you guys for something that you guys can do throughout your education. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Can we give them a round of applause? They're so cute.
Member Barry.
Yeah, I am wondering, what are some of the coolest things that you've made the Legos do with your coding?
Any of you can answer. You want to talk? You look ready. You can. Come on up. You want to talk in the microphone? You're ready. The two of you, come on up, both of them. All right, Vivian first, then Alicia. Go ahead. All right, what do you want to say?
Well, there's a lot of different buttons that you can put on, to code, like the things that you build. And me and Alicia did a lot of the building together. And I just love building and coding Legos with her.
Alicia, you want to add something?
there's a lot of coding blocks, and sometimes you just want to kind of figure out what they do, and sometimes you do something funny, and instead of being embarrassed, it's actually kind of fun.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Well, I want to thank you for coming tonight, and thanks to your adults for bringing you here. If you'd like to really quickly come up here along with Miss West and have your picture taken.
Ooh, come on, Fancies. Let's go. We'll have it. I didn't know that was going to happen. Where do we stand here?
I want one. I want one. I want.
Look at us. Yes. There we go.
Un, deux, trois.
Un, deux, trois.
Un, deux, trois.
Looks good.
Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you for coming to speak to us tonight, and good luck with those coding projects. And now it's time for bed. Right, exactly. Good night. Thank you. All right, next on our agenda is hearing from members of the public. Miss Palazzo, I don't see her here, so we're going to move on. We have no members of the public here to address us. So we will move on to our consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to remove from the consent agenda? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The consent agenda has been approved. We are now moving on to our discussion items. Our first item up for discussion is our K-12 Social Studies curriculum adoption, and we have Bethany Van Ostel, Assistant Director of Teaching and Learning, and Jamie Hawkinson, Dean at Creek Valley Elementary School. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Good evening, Chair Gabler, board members, Dr. Stanley, and community. Thank you for the opportunity to present our recommendation for updating our K-12 social studies resources. I think it's important that we pause and just note that while we know that there are some uncertainties with our social studies standards, we in our teaching and learning department feel very strongly about this recommendation still going forward as is because of our needs for updating our resources. We've been doing some deep work looking at the resources that are being recommended in this report and looking to see if standards would revert back to old standards, so 2012 standards, still aligned. If updated, still aligned. And so I did bring some documentation around that too, if you guys have further questions about that. But we just feel really strongly that our teachers have been doing an incredible job creating materials, but they haven't had updates in a really long time. And what the updates in this report will allow us to do is to have that updated rigor, relevance, and that, again, vertical and horizontal alignment across the system that's so critical. So as you all know, that we started this work back in 2022 when we started our design teams. And we were engaging that comprehensive curriculum design process. And so through that plan, we were looking closely and aligning it to our strategic plan, specifically Strategy A, which is focused on that personalized learning, and Strategy B, which is addressing the educational excellence. So you're familiar, we heard you talk about it, Chair Gabler, implementation science, right? We are very committed to that process. And so going through that process, we really looked at practices that would build on our current practices but continue to enhance those as we were looking to align to the new standards at the time. And so I just want to say I'm incredibly proud of our design team. that's been meeting. We have had elementary design team, which Jamie Hawkinson, our admin dean at Creek Valley, has been leading that charge, and then our secondary design team. And so I believe it's on page 3 where we have those educators listed, but I just want to give them a shout out. They've done an incredible job working through an extensive process to come to these recommendations. So I just wanted to give them a huge shout out. And so while there are recommended updates across the board K-12, I specifically we wanted Jamie to come and speak to the process specific to K-5, because there's some really unique opportunities and some really encouraging energy around this particular component. So I'm going to have her, I'm going to pass off to her. But again, I just want to reiterate that in working with the company that Jamie's going to talk about, they really have confirmed that regardless of which way the legislature might take our standards, that we will be supported and having an aligned curriculum regardless. So with that, I'm going to pass to Jamie and let her share all of the exciting things around specifically the K-5 recommendation.
Thank you, Bethany. Thank you for letting me come today. Good evening, Chair Gabler and board members, Dr. Stanley and Edina community. Thanks for giving us the space to share my excitement and our excitement in the incredible work that this team has been doing over the past few years. And I just have a few highlights of some of the history that we've of the work that we've been doing over the years. So we've been digging deep into the current reality at every grade level K-5, surveying teachers, current practices, resources that are in place, as well as their hopes and dreams of future resources. And we heard from multiple stakeholders across multiple grade levels, which was a great starting point for the work that we knew we needed to do moving forward. We did also research the standards that are currently in place of the 2011-2012 and the 2021 standards. We analyzed the similarities and the potential changes that would be moving forward. We looked at best practices that are aligned with both social studies as well as literacy. We formed many opportunities about well-rounded content knowledge and implementation of that content with specific instructional practices to social studies. And I was able to also attend many of the 612 discussions as well to see what they were seeing that K-5 in that alignment to see all pre-K-12, which was really great in our discussions as well. And then we started looking at the resources and the possibilities moving forward to meet the needs of both our current and our future learners. We created North Stars. I know Bethany talks often about the North Stars, and the team came up with as Dr. Smells used to say, the tights. I'm sure some of you are familiar with those, but really aligning to that strategic plan, really learner-focused, standards-based, accessible, all of those things. And so throughout this process, we found that there was a very big energy around connection to literacy, K-5 alignment across all 6 sites, accommodations for multiple levels of learning styles, and increased opportunities for those depths of knowledge in the content, and common assessments, which was really at the forefront of the work. So we found all of this in Studies Weekly. And then I have just some examples of the printed version of Studies Weekly, which, I mean, if you think kindergarten, my community, the standards have not changed so much in the strand work. But one of the highlights of this, and I know it seems old school, but the print. To put print in front of our learners, thinking about the literacy aspect to that and having them have it in their hands, having something they could write on, they could cut apart, they could take home, they could share in their learning. Now, there is an online component to this, which we really appreciate because it also supports multiple language overlays on that platform. And that is something that we really wanted to bring forth with this because both French and Spanish are a huge part of the elementary space now, right? And so we need to have that available. And each version also comes with a large teacher resource binder, and this assists in that scope and sequence and the instruction. But the greatest highlight that we were really excited about is this is a beautiful complement to Benchmark Advance. The strategies that are taught in our ELA in our blocks will easily transfer to this resource application at all levels. Thinking maps, writing responses, this in-hand print magazine, it just enhances their and extends their literacy skills, and it'll synthesize their learning at a greater level. So I also want to extend a huge thank you to this team. Every grade level is represented, and they've done a lot of work with us, and they will continue to do the work moving forward in the years of the implementation process. And we all appreciate your consideration for this recommendation. So thank you, and I'll give it back to Bethany.
Yeah, so as Jamie said, we're just happy to answer some of your questions, but we're very grateful for the opportunity for you guys to consider this recommendation.
Thank you. Board members, what questions do you have?
I just had a comment, not a question, but I wanted to say thanks for going back and factoring in the fact that we may revert back if legislation passes and whatnot, that it's important to know that we're still aligned across the board. So thank you for taking that time to do that.
No problem.
I think I have a question about the implications of that. One of the things that I struggle with is that when we think about American history or U.S. history, right, there are a large fabric of things that go into that. And even though we can then drill down into specific things that are in the current standard versus what the old standard might have had, how do we account for in our curriculum in terms of in American history, we're covering those bases? It probably depends on what kind of curriculum we end up choosing to go with, does it not? In terms of like what resource we're actually calling upon to be put forth?
For the interpretation of the standards, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so
I mean,
like,
so the standards really will, the interpretation of the standards is really what guides our work in terms of that component of it. And the standards really from, the main strands of the standards have not changed that much from the old standards to the new standards. And so that really and truly is what we would consider the foundation of what students will learn in our classrooms, right, are the Minnesota State standards. And so our curriculum then is complementary of that, right? That's kind of, I like to use language like our vehicle, right? It's like our vehicle delivering that. I think I've said that with ELA also. So I think that really getting to the essence of what those standards truly do drill down to
thank you
is
for
what
that.
guides
Thank
us.
you for that clarification. So it's just, I'm trying to inform myself and anyone else for that matter. So it's really the standards, right, that are then promoted and dictated by the legislature and the MDE in terms of what will then come from that. And so any questions or challenges or changes to those standards that then don't reflect maybe what we all might want to value and to put as for what we think is appropriate, again, using an example of U.S. history, that's really where the argument needs to be made as opposed to in what you guys are doing in your interpretation. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, or your advocacy for that at the state level.
Advocacy is a wonderful
Yeah.
word. Thank you.
Yep, yep.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate that.
I had a question. Thank you for, I know we had the opportunity to hear you both present at our work session last month and ask some questions there, and I see the great chart in here in response to that, so thank you for doing that. I had a question, so regarding that chart, you talked about the review process is still underway, and so Dean Hawkinson talked about how the K-5 curriculum, and I see that there's some grades where we don't need to make changes. We're gonna keep it as is. But some of those other ones, like for instance, 7th grade and 8th grade, do we do similar to what I know, I'm thinking to what we're gonna see later in action, benchmark, with our English language arts. Do we pilot any of these? Is that part of the, where are we in terms of, I see that there's different years and such, but can you talk a little bit about how this gets rolled out, how we decide that these are the curriculums that align with the standards and that fit for what our needs are? And also, when you anticipate these, like when these would come up for action? Are they all coming up next month, or is this more of just an update?
That's a great question. So let me start with the process.
there's a couple questions there.
The process really is, just follows that implementation science process in terms of like exploration. So they start with looking at our current reality, looking in to see, usually, again, new standards are driving that. So we'll look at our current reality, we look at our data, how are students' needs being met, what changes might we want to entertain. And then with secondary, they usually look at the choice of, there is an option to write your own, or there's an option to look at a packaged program or a curriculum, prepackaged, program. And so we don't in Edina have a pilot where we've tried out different programs. The team goes through an extensive process and identifies the top recommendation. And once that's approved, there's usually, with larger, like elementary, for example, we would have like a group of early implementers. For 7th and 8th grade social studies, there's 8 teachers. And so to have just 2 of them, or just, it's an easier implementation to manage, to support those 8 teachers. And so they still go through early implementation, but we don't do it in part, if that makes sense. They would all implement together. And so that group would start implementing it next year. With elementary, however, there's certain things to consider, right? We're gonna have all of our teachers implementing Benchmark Advance. To implement 2 brand-new curriculum programs, very big changes. Think of the transition that's gonna occur, right? That would be too much. However, we've got this team who has been deeply involved in the process. They're excited and ready to start implementing. So that group of early implementers would implement next year, pending board approval, okay? There might be a couple brought in on that also, but it would be a small group, just like we have our LLT, our literacy leads that are implementing Benchmark this year. And that's important with large groups of implementers. We want to make sure we're working out any kinks with technology, any things with resources we might learn, they help inform the PD that we're gonna offer. And so with secondary, it does look a little bit different because they're content specialists. So we don't have to think about I don't wanna say we don't have to think about their capacity, but it's in a different way. Do you know what I'm saying? So the color coding here, I should say too, a couple of the color coding is because of when government will be necessary based on our changes. So that's a piece of this. But from when we brought this to you last time to now, when we have this in front of you now, the elementary decision recommendation was made and the middle school. So there's way more filled in here than before. So hopefully that helps with understanding the rollout and the intentionality and the thought process around how we choose to go into that early implementation phase, depending really largely on the number of people who are going to be implementing. Like how heavy of a lift will that be?
And then similar to our implementation science, once these are chosen because they align well with the standards, and once they're rolled out, then we revisit and say, okay, cultural geography, Pearson Contemporary for 9th grade is working really well. We feel like we need to make a couple additional changes, and then, that follows that implementation science, right? Where you're circling back to say, what other supports do we need to give?
Yeah, it's Plan, Do, Study, Act. So once they get to full implementation, there's the Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle.
Okay.
And there's just a constant monitoring of that. And so we're collecting implementation data and student outcome data to see if it's having the impact as intended, right? And so it's not to say there might not be adjustments along the way, because we always will need to, they call it adjust on purpose, right? So that's just where the data helps us along the way when we look to see how it's landing.
Okay.
Yep.
So will this come forward for the board to take action on next month, K-12?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
That's my understanding, is that what's in this report is coming forward for action, even though there's different years.
That it's rolling out.
But that we might want to check with Jody and Mert.
Okay,
Just
sounds
for
good.
final say on that.
Great.
That's my understanding.
Thank you, both. Any other questions, board members? Yes, Jen?
With you've got K-5 as orange, which is 26, 27, and if you're going to be doing a smaller group, is there also monies needed in 25, 26 for that, or
Yes.
how are you covering that?
Great question. So it will be less, that's the entire total. I didn't know at this point how many teachers might early implement next year. And so the 240 is the total. So what would end up happening is that would be less, right? So there would be a little portion spent next year, and then the 240. I don't know, I'm gonna guess like maybe 20,000 or something, right? I'm just kind of guessing, but yeah, so it'll be a group of 20 teachers or less that would implement next year. But great question. Would you like me to make that more clear in this for the next report?
I think it would be good to have the dollars there so
Sure.
we don't forget
Even an
about
estimate,
it,
yeah.
or
That sounds good.
it's not a very large dollar amount, but I would hate for it to get lost someplace and then throw you off if
Thank
you didn't have
yes,
the money.
I will do that. Good, great.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much. Appreciate it.
Great.
And appreciate the team's work on this as well. So please pass that along on behalf of the
Thank
board.
you. I appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, next up on our agenda, oops, where's my sheet? Is the revised budget fiscal year 2025 and fiscal year 2026 budget parameters. And I welcome up Director of Finance and Operations, Mert Woodard, to take us through this report.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the school board, Superintendent Stanley. Tonight, I'd like to briefly review a number of proposed revisions to our current year budget as well as the plan for next school year. I won't go through every single budget revision item. However, I would like to point out that these were reviewed in significant detail at our January Finance and Facilities Committee meeting as well as our February board work session. As good as the administration might think it is at budgeting, as new and better information does come along, we do like to continually revise those so that we have the most accurate information available for both decision-making at the board level as well as informing our public. And I will go through some of the high-level items kind of on a fund-by-fund level, going through all 5 of our main operating funds. Of course, beginning with the general fund, which finances the bulk of our operations as a school district. The most important variable to think about here is enrollment. We plan for this school year with 8,630 average daily membership, or that's our enrollment. We're actually coming in close to about 8,670 or 8,675 this school year. So enrollment has been robust. That's fantastic news for the school district. As a result, we will need to revise upward our general education revenue budget by that 45 or so additional ADM. So we're anticipating adding about $540,000 of additional revenue. The second major general fund revenue component that we'll be proposing a revision is our school term unemployment aid. As you'll remember, the legislative session of 2023 made it possible for school term employees to collect unemployment benefits during the summer months. A one-time appropriation was given from the state to all school districts. It was about a $135 million pot of money. Our forecast indicated that that money would be fully exhausted during the summer of 2024. As such, we didn't budget any revenue in that category for this school year. However, we did budget for the expenditures. Luckily, we will be reimbursed this school district, or this school year rather, 100% of the way. That's going to be an addition of $312,000 of revenue, which is good news. The 2024 legislative session, which was a policy year, did have a little bit of finance attached to it in the area of the READ Act. So there were 2 new READ Act aids, the READ Act Literacy Aid, as well as the READ Act Teacher Compensation Fund. Those 2 can be exclusively used for READ Act purposes, so it's basically going to be money in on a one-time basis and money out on a one-time basis. That's about $654,000. That money may or may not be fully expended this school year. Any residual value will simply roll over to subsequent years to be used only for that purpose of READ Act eligible expenditures. The third major or fourth major area of revenue that the school district's receiving this school year that wasn't part of our original budget is the one of the 4 purposes of the debt issuance we made this fall, the 2024A general obligation bonds. One of the purposes was capital notes to finance our bus purchases throughout the district. So that's going to be $1.5 million that will be deposited into the operating capital fund to be used for purchasing school buses. And then finally, a note on special education revenue. This isn't a revision item, but just more for your information. If you've been paying attention to what's coming out of the state with their forecast at the moment, there's a little bit less money at this time than was predicted 2 years ago when a lot of this new money was put into law. And so it appears that special education revenue in the current year will be reduced by about 5% for all school districts in the state. So they're going to be prorating, as they like to say at the state level, by 95%. Luckily, our revenue estimates were quite conservative. We budgeted in a very conservative manner. And so even with that proration, we're still likely going to exceed actual revenue in terms of, or against what we budgeted. So that's good news and kind of why we maintain that conservative approach. Overall, we're anticipating adding $3.6 million of revenue above and beyond what we had originally budgeted for. Moving to expenditures, we're expecting to expend $2.6 million more than we originally budgeted, so that difference is going to be about a $1 million add to our fund balance. Some of the main components include used diesel bus purchases. So last school year, the school board approved purchasing 5 used buses to the tune of $440,000. Those buses did not arrive until after July 1st, and so instead of accounting for those last school year, we need to account for those this school year. We did improve or increase our salaried or licensed salaries by about $91,000. When we budget for those, depending on the movement that occurs after that, which teachers are actually here versus who I use for my budgeting, that can create a variance. So on a $58 million teacher salary budget, we were off by about $90,000. Not too bad. We did also have a number of collective bargaining agreements this year approved by the school board. Both of our SCIU units, our custodians, our bus drivers, our paraprofessionals, our principals, as well as our cabinet unit. Those salary enhancements were about $900,000 more than originally budgeted for, and so we'll have to revise our budget to reflect those. We also have to allocate funds for those READ Act expenditures that I mentioned, so we're going to both reflect the revenue coming in, offset by the expenditures going out, so we're expecting a zero balance in that fund. Overall, as I said, about $2.6 million of additional revenues, so we're going to add $1 million to our fund balance. Any question on general fund before I move over to the food service fund? As you all know, this is the second year that we're operating our free school meals, universal free meals for all students. And as you might expect, participation continues to increase. We're serving about 130 meals more per day this school year than we did last year, which is fantastic. And as a result, we will revise our revenue budget upwards by about $830,000. And that's going to be offset by expenditures of about $690,000. So we'll be adding an additional fund balance to our food service fund of about $228,000, and that figure does include a general fund chargeback. So any services the general fund that are appropriate, that is provided to the food service fund, we will recoup some of that back in our general fund. That fund continues to operate extremely well with no financial assistance from the general fund, which is kind of what you want from your food service program, so that's fantastic. I mentioned a for-purpose general obligation debt issuance this fall. The second purpose was continuing to fund our long-term facilities maintenance program with some bonded debt, and so that issuance will be $6.6 million added to the building construction fund to be used for deferred maintenance projects throughout the district. That's going to be offset by about $34,000 of issuance costs, so the costs we pay to our municipal advisors, the rating agency, the bond underwriters, et cetera. The main reason that we issued that bond in the fall of 2024 was to refund the 2014A and 2015A voter-approved bonds. So we'll be recognizing revenue or other financing sources of about $100 million in that fund to be almost completely offset by paying off those old bonds, and now we're going to be paying for them at a lower interest rate over the next 10 or so years. Again, saving some significant money for our taxpayers, which is great news. And so we have to make these accounting entries to reflect that activity. Again, about $100 million coming in, about $100 million going out. That fund will have a fund balance change of near zero at the end of the school year. Any questions on the other funds of the school district? So as I mentioned a couple times throughout that little presentation, we'll be adding about $1 million to our fund balance. If you add that to the previous financial forecast that was shared in December, the financial position of the district continues to be stable in the short term, with budget reductions looming in fiscal year 27 or fiscal year 2028 at the latest. This additional $1 million does not change that trajectory at all. And so we are proposing that budget parameters for next school year be basically we operate the same exact way we are this year. We'll go through our BERG process. Our final meeting with our community members is tomorrow evening, and we'll have some recommendations that will be shared by future leadership, I believe this spring or into the fall, about how we proceed for fiscal year 2027. Any questions?
Board Member Ellenberg.
I don't have a question, Director Woodard. I just wanted to thank you and the rest of the finance team for being fiscally conservative, especially in the times that we have right now where there's so many unknowns, and being so spot on with your assumption that you've made. And I just really appreciate your diligence to our finances. So thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you for taking the time to walk us through that in such detail, too. I appreciate that. And so,
Just one thing I didn't add, I will be bringing this back to the board for action at our next regular meeting.
okay, great. Thank you, Director Woodard. We will now move on to policy review. We have 4 policies up for discussion tonight, and I will turn it over to Board Member Allenberg, Chair of the Policy Committee, to take us through those.
Good evening. We have, as Board Chair Gabler said, we have 4 policies that were reviewed by the committee this month. As a reminder to the community, all of our policies are reviewed for clarity to make sure they align with federal and state law and are aligned against model policy with the Minnesota School Board Association. And so first, I apologize, Director Woodard. Our first policy is policy 534, which is emergency health situations and district insurance limitations. And there were no changes to this policy other than putting the correct supervisor in. But Director Woodard if you have any questions regarding this policy.
Thanks, Vice Chair Allenberg. As you mentioned, no changes of substantive nature proposed by the administration. The policy is very well written, quite vague, which is, I think, the intent. Anytime a non-personnel injury or liability occurs on school district premises, the injured party, I guess their insurance is always primary unless the district could be proven to be negligent, and I think this policy achieves that general sentiment.
Do board members have any questions? Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to talk about policy 535, which is education of homeless children, and I'd like to invite up Director of Student Support Services, Jody Remsing. This policy mirrors federal statute, and there are no changes to this policy other than some semantics. But Director Remsing, do you have any additional context for the board?
No, I don't. You summed it up very well.
Board members, questions or comments?
Just a question, given our times. If for some reason the federal government decided to change its standards or its statutes or whatever related to this particular area, what would be our process in terms of we've identified what we want to do related to this group of students? If we did not agree with the federal government's approach or whatever it is, would we have the ability within our legal standard to be able to continue with this policy, or would we be required to revise it based on whatever the federal government does or doesn't do?
The federal law would supersede our district policy, so we would go and revise it so that it would be in alignment.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. So the policy says that every district has a homeless liaison. Who is that for our district?
So Joanne Karch is our assistant director in our office, and she serves as the liaison for our district.
Okay. At our school buildings, is there a way for families who might be experiencing homelessness to find out about this or to know who this person is?
Yeah, I know right now the majority of people are referred to their building social worker, and then through the social worker, that's how they're referred to Joanne. I think it might also be available online, but we can also send out greater communications too to ensure that everybody knows.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions about this policy? Okay, thank you, Director Remsing. Next, we're going to move on to policy 517, student recruiting, and I'd like to invite up Director of Communications, Daphne Edwards. And this policy mirrors language in the Minnesota High School League. It's also a model MSBA policy. And Director Edwards, I don't know if you want to speak to it or want me to speak to it. We had quite a lengthy conversation in policy about the intent behind the policies we have here at Edina Public Schools. The policy itself does not have measurable impact on the operations of Edina Public Schools. So there was since it's mirroring High School Athletic Association policy, there was question is it something that we should have in policy, not have in policy? And the committee, after discussion, decided that since it does not confuse or hurt operations here in Edina Public Schools, it was worthwhile to keep the policy for community clarification and message sending. But I want to bring in Director Edwards to add whatever context or direction that you have for the board.
Yeah, I really think you summed it up.
Oh, we turned the microwave. Sorry. Thank you.
I'd say again that you summed it up perfectly in that both our policy and the Minnesota State High School League just provide a lot of guidance and direction and protection for schools. Vice Chair Allenberg, you had asked a question about Section 4A in our committee discussion about if capacity for programs and classes was actually taken into account for open enrollment in this policy. And so those two terms are two criteria, capacity of a program and class, have actually been eliminated because they're redundant.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you
That's the only
commenting on
thing,
that.
really. The other changes were primarily just edits.
Thank you. Questions from board members? Chair Gabler?
So is it fair to say that the main purpose of this policy is recruiting student athletes?
In practice?
In practice?
Yes.
Okay. And does this under the definition where it says definition of undue influence, where it says contact with a student from another school district, does school district include and cover private schools and charters?
It would be any school.
Any school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
And thank you for the question, because that was some of the discussion we had, which we believe the intent of the policy is for athletes, but we also are well aware that we live in an environment where districts are marketing
Right.
for students.
Our Knowledge Bowl won the whole state tournament
Right,
last
so,
year. We could be recruiting for that.
Right, so we were having some discussion like, could you read into this?
Right.
Sending out Facebook posts. So, and again, we landed on the policy itself does not change or confuse administrators in any way, and that was the concern the committee had, and since there wasn't any concern about us having the policy or conflicting with any advice from any other league, that we wanted to keep it there just to mix for clarification for parents. And we also didn't want to send a message by removing it that it's open season for recruiting in Edina. So
It certainly is broader than athletics. I think it's most often applied just in conversations with activities and athletics director Troy Stein, that it's often applied in the realm of athletics. And given our leadership of athletics, became another reason why we wouldn't want to remove any kind of protection, if you will, or any message that this is something that we take very seriously.
are there any other questions or comments about this? Thank you. Thank you, Director Edwards. Next, we're going to move on to Policy 519, student interviews by outside agencies. And Assistant Superintendent Nate Swenson is going to come up and talk about this policy with us. Assistant Superintendent Swenson, would you like to have the floor?
Vice Chair Allenberg, members of the board, Dr. Stanley. Interviews of students by outside agencies was largely reviewed by Alex Hatstrom and Building Leadership. And the one substantive change that was added is in relation to an exigent circumstance existing, that would essentially supersede the requirements of this policy. So as a tangible example, if law enforcement were to come to the school because of a suspected threat, where there is imminent danger, that they would be allowed to take the steps necessary to intervene without following the standard protocol of this procedure. So it's a very narrow circumstance that would allow that to happen, but an important element to add to this policy.
And the only other thing that I'll add is that it's, any other updates are aligning it with the Maltreatment of Minors Act. So that those were the other substantive changes to it.
Thank you.
Was this policy as part of the normal annual or cycle review as opposed to a reaction to something that happened?
Yes.
Thank you.
Director Gabler?
Thank you. Under General Statement of Policy 2A, it just lists a bunch of people that students may not be interviewed during the school day by people other than, and it has parents, school district officials, employees, and/or agents. What is considered an agent? Do we know?
Just give me 1 second. I believe that that would be referring to someone who would show up to do a maltreatment report.
Okay. Like
So like someone who is from the county who would have authorization to come in and talk to a student because of alleged, it's something, a CPS report or something like that.
Okay. Thank you, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot with
No,
that. That was,
that's still, I just needed to read it again real quick.
yeah, that makes sense that that's what it would be. Thank you.
Anything else? Great, so these policies will come back for approval next month. Thank you to the administrators that helped us or made the changes and updates to these policies. And that is all for Policy Committee.
All right, great. Well, then we are moving on to the action portion of our meeting. And as a reminder to the public, when items come forward to the board for action, they have more than likely come through committee, then come to the full board at a work session for discussion, come to a board meeting the following month for further discussion, and then another month later for action. So if you are a periodic tuner in to these meetings, you might think that we were just talking about social studies and it's one and done, but it really takes its way through a process. So tune in every month to see what's happening. So do I have a motion to approve the elementary literacy curriculum adoption recommendation of Benchmark Advance?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, and so Assistant Director of Teaching and Learning, Bethany Van Ostel, is here to present to us what we have up for action this evening. The Benchmark Advance curriculum.
Yes, so it's here for action. So I wasn't really sure what you needed me to present at this point, so, yeah.
I believe this is the same report that we received at our work session last
is,
month,
last
and I
month.
believe that there's probably not many updates to it, but I will open it up to the board.
Well,
Oh,
I
yeah.
have one update, actually, I did want to speak to. The quote that was linked in the last one and this one are different in their amounts, and I wanted to just speak clearly about why that is. You may have noticed that. So when we went back to updating our quotes, we wanted to add in, we wanted to make sure that we had added in our Adelante programs for our kindergarten, first, second, and third grade for our Spanish dual language. So that's one of the reasons why the amount went up a little bit from the last time. And then there was the one other reason was there was some small group knowledge building sets that we needed to adjust the numbers for based on just some of the calculations of how many classrooms were ordering those. And so that is just one other reason why the amount was different. So that was really all I had to update in terms of anything that would be different that was changed from last time to this time. So with that, I'm ready for questions. Yeah.
Just a really quick clarification. When we talk about the dollar amounts, so it says X hundreds of thousands of dollars for 8 years. That's the total package that we're then agreeing to, but we actually pay it out on an annual basis. It's a license every year that we're paying out, or do we actually pay that money up front?
It depends. Usually it's up front, or
Oh.
sometimes you can split it up.
Okay.
Right, that depends. We work with Mert on that one.
Yeah. Okay.
And we determine that. But yeah, and you're paying up front for all the consumables and everything. So
Got it. I didn't
just-
know that. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Vice Chair Ellenberg.
So for community members that might only be seeing this, could you please explain to the community why this curriculum? What are the benefits to our students? What is the decision-making behind this curriculum?
Yeah, great question. It was a lengthy process. So this started 3 years ago with a team of teachers, representative of all of our grade levels and schools. We also had members of our special ed department who sat on the team. We had a media specialist. We had EL teachers sitting on the team. We had some admin representatives. And so as with most curriculum reviews, we start with knowing that there are new standards coming out. In addition to that, we had the Minnesota READ Act passed. And so within this process, we have had teachers who are going through our letters training, which is deep professional development around the science of reading. And so as our teachers have been learning more and more and more, they've been recognizing the need for updated resources in connection with new standards and the Minnesota READ Act. So with all of that context provided, they went through and really reviewed, they started reviewing 6 different programs, all of which were also being reviewed by MDE at the time. We used the exact same rubric that MDE was using. Actually, I shouldn't say the exact same, because we used the Reading League rubric in addition to our Tools of Cultural Proficiency rubric for curriculum instruction. And we deeply reviewed 6 programs initially through all the materials, looking at both language comprehension and the word recognition side of the reading ropes, making sure that all the components were there. In the process, we also reached out to collect information from our stakeholders, and that being students. We interviewed students, families, teachers. Linked in that report are themes that we were able to capture from that to help inform what we were going to be needing in terms of filling the need for our new resources. We narrowed that down last year to 3 programs. They, all of which were aligned to the science of reading, right? But there were different nuances. Benchmark rose to the surface unanimously after all staff had a chance to review them. The materials went around to all the buildings. They got to review all 3. And the team sat through 2 days of presentations from all 3 of the companies. The reason Benchmark rose to the surface was many reasons. Mostly it was a comprehensive program, which meant that they had components of all of the reading rope that were already baked into the system. Some districts choose to kind of puzzle piece it together a little bit, choosing different programs, but our staff really largely wanted something that was comprehensive. And so this program has the knowledge building small group sets. It has interdisciplinary, so there are units, 3 units of social studies, 3 units of science, 3 units of literary components, and so that was definitely something that was interesting. The Spanish program, Adelante, was that companion program that helped fill that need. So those were some of many that had it just kind of rise to the top. And again, unanimously across the board with all of our teachers on that committee, Benchmark was the #1 choice. And I'm gonna say, as we've been early implementing, so that team has been implementing it this year, the feedback on the program continues to get stronger as we go, which is really incredible. Not only that, but we're seeing impact on kids already. And so kids are engaged, the writing is so rigorous, kids are writing more deeply than they have in the past, and teachers are very excited with that. The bridge from elementary to middle school is beautiful in terms of what they're being asked to annotate, how they're being asked to really engage with text. I could keep going on. It was probably, you didn't want me to talk this long about it, but I can't help it. It's just a really incredible fit for our Edina staff and students. It really is. Continues to prove itself over and over again. So I've been able to get into some classrooms over the last few weeks, and seeing it in action is just awesome.
Can I ask? So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for clarification purposes, I want to make sure people understand that this curriculum is going to be used for Tier 1 instruction, which is for all students in the classroom. And we've been talking so much about our literacy plan. I do not want community members to think that we're changing materials in our literacy plan for intervention, that this is a new curriculum to replace our existing Tier 1 curriculum, correct?
Yep, this is Tier 1. There are opportunities within Benchmark for intervention, but Sunday is not going away at this point in terms of its intervention, Sunday 1 and 2. So that is specific for our intervention purposes. But yes, this will be replacing making meaning, being a reader, and being a writer.
Okay. And lastly, could you please speak to how this curriculum, alluded to it, but could you speak directly to how this curriculum can be utilized in our dual immersion program, and then why it's different for our French immersion program?
Yep. As with most curriculum programs, resources, we can find the Spanish translations, we can't find the French translations. And so just like this, the companion program Adelante marries beautifully with Benchmark. It's a seamless biliteracy program where it supports teachers in teaching both languages beautifully. So that's a perfect marriage. It's wonderful. It's working well. Our second grade teachers at the Spanish dual language are implementing it now. Going great. French, not the same. It's different. It's difficult in terms of considering the implementation of that. That said, we have two teachers, Molly Swiderski in 5th grade and Katie Thomas in 3rd grade, who are early implementing it. And they are working, we have a meeting tomorrow, in fact, down at Normandale to start thinking through what will the implementation plan look like. So will they be getting the materials? Yes. Are they translated in French? No. And so what does that look like in terms of preserving that, the beauty of Normandale and the beauty of that immersion experience without compromising that? How do we then continue to align with the district, align with the science of reading, making sure that kids get what they need to get out of that literacy block? So we are working through that plan very intentionally, along with Chris Holden and Connie Sack. Jody's there at the table, and our literacy coach, Sandra Harley, is at the table as well. So that implementation plan is currently being written.
Thank you for answering my questions.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to say thank you, Bethany, for being here tonight. I know Jody was supposed to be here, but taking over for that, we really appreciate that.
No problem. I'm happy to do so. This is exciting work.
I had one follow-up question. It's similar to the question that I had last month. For anyone that's really into the literacy piece, they know that MDE has this list of approved curriculums. And today was the day that that Benchmark was being reevaluated. I was assured last month that no matter what, we're really excited about it. It aligns with the standards and the work we're doing, and we're moving forward regardless. But did they in fact hit today as their deadline?
Yep. So they fell under. I do not know. It's the second level.
Okay.
So I think it's partial. So which is where most of the comprehensive programs are falling. It was interesting that list is getting longer. So we feel incredibly confident that we landed on the right program. And like I said, what we're seeing from students, it's really early to start using student outcome data on an implementation this brand new. But I did take a peek at winter data, and it's looking really strong. So I think we feel really confident. Will we have to adjust on purpose? Sure. But that's an incredibly great rating from MDE, even though it's not the highest rating.
And it's a good fit for our students, which is what we're looking for.
I believe, from what I am seeing and hearing from all of the feedback I'm collecting, and I'm collecting it regularly from the teachers, absolutely 100%.
Thank you.
Yes.
And thank you again for being here tonight.
No problem.
All right, board, we are moving on. We will now vote to approve the elementary literacy curriculum adoption recommendation of Benchmark Advance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The elementary literacy curriculum adoption recommendation of Benchmark Advance is approved. Thank you, Bethany. All right, you can text Jody. Tell her the good news. Tell her you did a great job. All right, do I have a motion to approve the Edina Public Schools proposed academic calendars for 2026, 2027, and 2027, 2028, and adjustments to 2025, 2026 academic calendar?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Well, welcome to Assistant Superintendent Nate Swenson and Executive Director of Human Resources Sonia Saylor, and they are going to present to us the calendars.
Good
Good evening, Chair Gabler, members of the school board, Dr. Stanley. So as you know, we presented, Assistant Superintendent Swenson and I presented at our June work session and also at our February regular board meeting in discussion about the 26-27 and 27-28 proposed academic calendars. In addition, for tonight's action item, there are a couple of modifications that we are recommending to the 25-26 calendar. One is, as you know, we've discussed in the past that we're making a change to our Connect and Assess days at the elementary level to, rather than have those be the Monday and Tuesday of the first week of school, to actually have them be on the preceding Friday, the Friday of Teacher Workshop Week, and the Monday of the first week of school, with Tuesday being a day for our elementary teachers to be able to spend time really assessing and reviewing the data that they've collected over the course of those 2 days before our elementary students arrive on Wednesday. For 24-25, the school board approved a modification to the calendar to make that change, but it remains for 25-26 because that was something new. So we're recommending that we make that change for the 25-26 calendar as well, which would move the Connected Assess Day to Friday, August 22nd, and then Monday, August 25th, with Tuesday being that day to allow our elementary teachers time to assess, or excuse me, review the assessment data. In addition, through going through this process, we found that there was a double up of, actually it was September 30th, 2025, ended up on both the September calendar and the October calendar. We were lucky enough to see that and catch that at this point. And so we're also recommending that we correct that clerical error, which would move our last student day to Friday, May 29th, 2026, and our last teacher data day to Monday, June 1st, 2026, which aligns with the 2024-2025 calendar as well. Are there any questions about the proposed adjustments to 25-26 or the proposed calendars for 26-27 and 27-28?
I just wanted to say thank you for the description in the board packet that explicitly talked about what you just said. It was easy to clearly identify where it was, so I didn't have to go searching for it, so thank you.
I just wanted to thank both you and the calendar committee, because we have volunteers and people on staff that do this. And I know that it's like finding a needle in a haystack to try to balance the needs of everyone and come up with a calendar. So thank you, and thank everybody that works on this and putting together a calendar that makes sense and is forward-thinking for all of our families. I just appreciate it.
Thank you. It's a great committee.
Yes, I agree with that. One question that sometimes gets asked is, would you mind reviewing how the decision is made to start before Labor Day? Because that is a very common question we get, and people have strong feelings about if we should start before Labor Day or not.
That is correct. So in the state of Minnesota, you can start before Labor Day if you have construction projects that total a minimum of $400,000 or more. So in accordance with the board's guiding change document, and this has been going on, I believe, for at least 5 years at this point, the long-term maintenance plan within our school district that occurs to our buildings, to our facilities every summer, far exceeds that amount of money. And because it is easier and far more efficient to be able to get a good earlier start on those projects, the decision was made a number of years ago to start the week before Labor Day. So that's where that comes from.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's not just us saying that we like to start the year early, so. All right, we will now vote to approve the Edina Public Schools proposed academic calendars for 2026, 2027, and 2027, 2028, and adjustments to the 2025, 2026 academic calendar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The Edina Public Schools proposed academic calendars for the 26, 27, and 27, 28, and adjustments to the 25, 26 academic calendar are approved. Thank you both. All right, do I have a motion to approve the Achievement and Integration Fiscal Year 2026 budget?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'm going to welcome up Dr. Franny Becaire, our Director of Achievement, Equity, and Multilingual Learning Programming, and she is going to walk us through the budget. Welcome.
Will you turn on the,
to start talking. So good evening, Chair Gabler, members of the board, and Dr. Stanley. Reviewing the Achievement and Integration budget, there are no changes from what was presented previously. The one change, you're probably going, wait, there is a change. We've now put it on the the form that it needs to be submitted to MDE on. Previously, we pulled it out and submitted it on just a spreadsheet that was easier to read instead of having to flip through 6 different tabs. That's the only difference. There was a small budget update from the very first budget that was presented to you in January, and that is working with Director Woodard, that we were doing an estimate in January, and we're getting closer to what the estimate for the budget is. Other than that, everything remained the same for what has been presented.
Thank you. Board members, questions? Vice Chair Ellenberg.
Director Becaire, I just wanted to tell you that I appreciate the intentionality of how you've built this plan and how it links directly to the district's metrics plan. I really appreciate that. I appreciate how we're measuring students, measuring their success. It's a job well done, so thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Dr. Becaire. We'll now vote to approve the Achievement and Integration Fiscal Year 2026 budget. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The Achievement and Integration Fiscal Year 2026 budget is approved. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the American Indian Education Program vote of concurrence?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Becaire is here to present to us, to the board, about this vote.
Yeah. So every year, the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, we write 5 goals, and the district writes 5 goals, and then the APAC committee votes concurrent or non-concurrent with how our American Indian programming is going, and then fills out annual compliance documentation that we have written goals, and we have provided an update on how we are doing on those goals. There has been a shift in APAC leadership. So that you will see a new name that signed off on the concurrent documentation. We were able to meet the district and the APAC, the new members of the APAC, and we had a conversation about non-concurrent or concurrent. They thought very hard about it and what they felt and wanted to. They were unfortunately not able to be here tonight, but what they did want shared with the board was they feel that we have made a very good effort and progress towards the 15 recommendations that were made last year, and they would like us to keep making progress that we were towards then. So they decided to vote concurrent because of the work that is in place. And a lot of the work, they are extremely happy with the work that Dwayne is doing in the elementaries. Dwayne being our full-time American Indian Cultural Liaison that came out of the vote of non-concurrence last year, has developed incredibly robust programming at elementary and middle school, and I think we finally have our high school programming landed. It's a little bit more challenging because they changed how advisory is done this school year, so we had to start all over, but we have something in place now. So we still have work to do, but we are moving in the right direction.
All right, board members, questions that you have? Board Member Ellenberg.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I wanted to, first of all, thank you for your leadership on this and moving us from non-concurrence to concurrence and the improvements that we've made. And I appreciate you acknowledging that we still have room to go. And I cannot speak for the board, but I will speak for myself that there is a commitment to keeping our commitment from myself that we will make those improvements. So if there are any parents listening, we are a board that is committed to living our mission, which is for all students. And so thank you again for bringing Dwayne on. He was just featured in Edina Sun Current, in case anyone didn't notice, and putting us on the right track. So appreciate it.
Can I just share something about that Sun Current article?
Absolutely.
Because I think this is the part, because when Dwayne met with us in the fall, he said he wanted to develop a program that was not superficial, but that was deep. That article was written by a non-native student. The English language arts teachers at the high school are reading a book by a Native American author, and they invited Dwayne to come in. The student who was in class was so moved by his presentation and that she came up to him after and said, I really would like to write an article about you for the Zephyrus. So the article was first published in the Zephyrus, and then somebody read it, and it made it to the Sun. And it's very exciting, because I think for a non-native student to be so moved by a presentation to then want to write an article and share his story with everyone says a lot about our commitment to the programming and our Native students in the district.
Thank you for sharing that. I did not know that, so I appreciate that information. One thing I just wanted to reinforce what Erica just said is that, work in progress is still work, right? And that we still have things to do, and that we're making that commitment to make that happen. That's what I'm very pleased with this report. What?
I was joking. I think someone cut my microphone, so I would stop talking at the board meeting. Sorry.
Got it, okay. If I'm gonna be the butt of a joke, I'm happy, I just wanna be in on it.
No, it was myself.
That's okay, yeah. So what we just took action on was as far as your budget, right? To go to what we need to be able to do and so on and so on, and the cultural liaisons are in that budget. So just the dynamic of what we just voted on to support that budget, but now we have the work and sort of seeing the work that's coming forward with the vote of concurrence. It's the continuation. So my only question, which is awesome, I love that. The question is that as we think about how we keep moving forward in our progress, I want to make sure that you have what you need in order to be successful with that. And so, not that this is a rhetorical question at the moment, but it's more of, I want to make sure that you feel empowered that, okay, as you continue to work through this process, and even though we did the budget just now, do we still have what we need to do to continue to deliver on the commitment that Erica was talking about? We have to make sure that we're supportive in that regard to you and your team. So I just want to make sure that you know that.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the work on this report and getting the vote of concurrence. I echo my fellow board members. One of the things that I'm wondering is as we kind of measure the progress on these goals, I think in the future, being able to kind of see how we're making progress on them. Like I know one of them is 80% in the Fast Bridge. And it said, like, we don't have that data yet for the winter, but just understanding where we are in hitting those goals, I think would be helpful just in future reports to kind of give board members of like, how close are we? Where's the progress that needs to happen on that?
Okay.
So, yeah. And then I know in the past, and it sounds like there's been a change in the committee, but I know in the past and on this document too, there's a spot for committee members' names that is empty at this point, so.
We're in a rebuilding
Okay,
phase
okay.
with the committee.
Yes.
So we're reaching out to any American Indian families listening. Please join an email is coming from Dwayne reaching out, telling us now is the time to rebuild the APAC and review the goals and write new goals for next year.
Great. And then my last comment was about that awesome article that started in the Zephyrus and then made its way to the Sun Current. So I read that too, and I learned a lot. And I had read that Angela Boulay book before, and it's an excellent book. So, all right, thank you. We will now vote to approve the American Indian Education Program. Vote of concurrence. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The American Indian Education Program vote of concurrence is approved. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve policies 513, 521, 524, 604, 617, 619, 623, and 632?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Policy Chair Ellenberg is.
Yes, so this is quite a few policies, and just for clarification, I'm just going to run through them really fast before we vote to make sure there are no questions. There was 513, student promotion, acceleration, retention, and early childhood admission. There were no changes to this policy other than adding the correct administrators for the decision-making process. 521, student disability non-discrimination, that was simply a name change. 524, electronic technology acceptable use. This was updated with the current parameters of cell phone use or electronic technology use at the different levels in our district. 604, grade level configuration, enrollment at school sites. This was updated to make sure it included Spanish dual language programming. 617, class size and staffing, was updated with current procedures and included class size parameters. 619, student assignments to teachers and classes. There were no significant changes to that policy. 623, summer school instruction. There was no significant changes, but the policy was updated to ensure it aligned with current practice. And 632, chemical use abuse, was updated with current practices and procedures. Do board members have questions or comments about these policies before we vote? Hearing none, I'll turn it back to you, Chair Gabler.
Right, thank you. We will now vote to approve policies 513, 521, 524, 604, 617, 619, 623, and 632. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Policies 513, 521, 524, 604, 617, 619, 623, and 632 are approved. All right, board members, board leadership and committee updates. Do any board members have updates? Director Aram.
We are just wanted to remind the public that we have Day at the Capitol for our LIC committee. So we invite any community members to attend on March 24th. We'll be there from 8:30 on throughout the day. We'll have a contingency of students as well as staff and also some community members. So everybody's welcome to come. Our platform is posted on the website, and we look forward to anybody who's willing to come and help us advocate for Edina and public education.
Thank you. I had one small update. I just wanted to give the public an update on the interim superintendent search process. The full board will be interviewing the recommended finalist for the interim superintendent position on this Wednesday, March 5th, starting at 5 p.m. in room 350. And that's the room where we hold our work sessions. So this meeting is open to the public and will be live streamed for anyone wanting to watch. Dr. Stanley, do you have any updates you'd like to share?
Yes, I do have a couple. First of all, I really want to acknowledge the girls' hockey team. For any of you who were at that game, it was a nail biter. It was some of the best hockey that I personally have ever watched, and that's including the Wild. I could not have been more proud of the girls, and I know they were so disappointed, but to go into double overtime like that was pretty incredible. So I am incredibly proud of our girls hockey team, and hold your head up high because you have made all of us proud. Let's see, we have a lot going on right now. We have swimming, we have boys hockey. If you didn't get your tickets, I'm sorry. because they're all sold out right now. And just again, incredibly proud of our kids and just their efforts and everything that they're doing. We also are moving into the second and final day of our budget, community budget task force that will be held tomorrow evening. And this is the time where the 65 task force members are going to be digging more deeply into comparable districts, both financially and academically. From there, the task force members have agreed they'll be holding community meetings, and then there will be an additional virtual meeting for those who can't make it to community meetings. And I am to talk about this amazing artwork that is in here. So the Southview Middle School art teachers are excited to display artwork from their 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in visual and media arts. The shared artwork represents a sampling of the following courses: 6th grade art course, narrative paintings and personal artworks; 7th grade art course, mixed media artworks; 8th grade visual and media arts, photography, emoji design, and mixed media; 6th grade media arts elective, digital landscapes and superhero trading cards; 7th grade media arts and coding elective, pop art digital design; and 8th grade pottery and sculpture elective, pop art sculptures and hand-built coil vases. The Southview art teachers, Samantha Jacobson, Michaela Ermiter, Dylan Welch, and Samuel Soule, stated, quote unquote, "We greatly appreciate the space to showcase the amazing talent and creativity of our students. It's an awesome opportunity for our students to showcase their hard work and dedication. We look forward to sharing more at the Library Art Show." Oh, go to the Library Art Show, everyone. It is amazing each year. And that is held in May. So tonight we have heard about robotics. We have heard about debate. We've heard about athletics. We've seen the arts, and it just never ceases to amaze me, just the amazing opportunities their kids have and just the great work that they do.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
We will now vote to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is passed and the meeting has adjourned.